Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Cornerstone's weekly Torah Parsha class. We are having a very nice weather time in Oregon right now. Literally some of the days in the last couple of weeks, we've had sunshine, heat, rain, and hail, and then snow all in one day. But thank the Lord for the moisture. I will never get tired of the green, even when I'm mowing the lawns, because after living in the Middle East for almost 4 years, I never know there were so many shades of brown. And so the green, I'll put up with any time. So it's gorgeous. If we could all rise for the readings. Today's Torah Parashah is number 26, Shemini, and Vayikra 9:1 through 11:47. Oops. Went a little fast, sorry. We have a delay here. There we go. Blessing before the reading of the Torah. Baruch Yahweh Hamivarak. Baruch Yahweh Hamivarak Le'olam Vahed. Baruch Yahweh Hamivarak Le'olam Vahed. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bakar banu mikol ha'amin v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Yahweh, Baruch Shemo, noten ha'torah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh, our Elohim, King of the universe, who has chosen us from among all peoples and gave us his Torah. Blessed are you, Yahweh, bless his name, giver of the Torah. Amen. In today's Torah reading, we're going to be reading Vayikra, chapter 9, verses 1 through 24. And I am checking now that I've been doing these for over a year now. I check what we read last year to make sure we try to get through all of it. Usually it's in about 3 sections over 3 years you read it. And when we're doing this publicly. All right, we do have a volunteer from Miranda.
And it came to pass on the 8th day that Moshe called Aharon and his sons and the elders of Israel. And he said unto Aharon, Take thee a bull calf for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering without blemish, and offer them before Jehovah. And unto the children of Israel thou shalt speak, saying, Take ye a he-goat for a sin offering, and a calf and a lamb, both of the first year, without blemish, for a burnt offering, and an ox and a ram for peace offerings to sacrifice before Jehovah, and a meal offering mingled with oil, for today Jehovah appeareth unto you. And they brought that which Moshe commanded before the tent of meeting, and all the congregation drew near and stood before Jehovah. And Moshe said, This is the thing which Jehovah commanded that ye should do, that the glory of Jehovah may appear unto you. And Moshe said unto Aharon, Draw near unto the altar, and offer thy sin offering and thy burnt offering, and make atonement for thyself and for the people, and present the offering of the people, and make atonement for them, as Jehovah commanded. So Aharon drew near unto the altar, and slew the calf of the sin offering, which was for himself. And the sons of Aharon presented the blood unto him, and he dipped his finger in the blood, and put it upon the horns of the altar, and poured out the blood at the base of the altar. But the fat and the kidneys and the lobe of the liver of the sin offering he made smoke upon the altar, as Jehovah commanded Moshe. And the flesh and the skin were burnt with fire without the camp. And he slew the burnt offering, and Aharon's sons delivered unto him the blood, and he dashed it against the altar round about. And they delivered the burnt offering unto him piece by piece, and the head, and he made them smoke upon the altar. And he washed the inwards and the legs, and made them smoke upon the burnt offering on the altar. And the people's offering was presented. And he took the goat of the sin offering, which was for the people, and slew it, and offered it for sin as the first. And the burnt offering was presented, and he offered it according to the ordinance. And the meal offering was presented, and he filled his hand therefrom, and made it smoke upon the altar besides the burnt offering of the morning. He slew also
Oops, I apologize. I'm sorry.
He slew also the ox and the ram, the sacrifice of peace offerings, which was for the people. And Aharon's sons delivered unto him the blood, and he dashed it against the altar round about. And the fat of the ox, and of the ram, the fat tail, and that which covereth the inwards and the kidneys, and the lobe of the liver. And they put the fat upon the breast, and he made the fat smoke upon the altar. And the breast and the right thigh Aharon waved for a wave offering before Yahuwah, as Moshe commanded. And Aharon lifted up his hands toward the people and blessed them, and he came down from offering the sin offering and the burnt offering and the peace offerings. And Moshe and Aharon went into the tent of meeting and came out and blessed the people. And the glory of Yahuwah appeared unto all the people. And there came forth fire from before Yahuwah and consumed upon the altar the burnt offering and the fat. And when all the people saw it, they shouted and fell on their faces.
Thank you. Thank you. Hallelujah. Sorry about the interruption there on that. Now for the blessing after the reading of the Torah. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat hamet v'chayei olam nata betachenu. Baruch atah Yahweh, Baruch Shemo, noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us the Torah of truth and planted everlasting life within us. Blessed are you, Yahweh. Bless his name, giver of the Torah. Amen. You can go ahead and be seated. Thank you. And today's Torah parasha, we have basically three sections. We have Yahweh accepts Aharon's offering, which Miranda read. Then we have the death of Nadab and Abihu. And then finally, the clean and unclean animals. Okay? And again, during our Torah portion, or parsha in the Hebrew, keep in mind, where is Yeshua in this? Okay? And how is this relevant to us today? Very important. Did you know some people do that with the Gospels? Like if they don't believe in I'll use English, Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior, right? They don't believe in any of that stuff. And someone comes up to try to witness to them, and they're sharing them about Jesus and the Gospels and stuff. Well, that was 2,000 years ago. What's that got to do with me? We're doing the same, and it does, as we all know, it has a huge thing to do with us. So we're doing the same thing here as well. And the Torah is also very important because the Torah and the prophets are the foundation. What sets the foundation straight is Yeshua being the cornerstone. Those of you contractors, you guys know how to do this stuff, okay? And then you build on that. So that's what we're actually doing today. And I'll open it up for anybody's questions, comments, observations on the Torah portion that we're reading this week. I'm sure you all read it 3 or 4 times this week. I'm kidding. I really don't expect that. It's okay. Yeah, Aspen.
Okay. My wife and I have gotten stuck on this in the past quite a bit. This is a really, 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 really significant portion. The two gentlemen who were smote for introducing the foreign fire.
Yeah.
They weren't just nobodies. These were the sons of Aaron. These were people who were allowed to go to the base of the mountain when Moshe ascended.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sorry, they were in the middle of the mountain. My wife's correcting me here. They had just been through a week plus of dry runs, and it took them, a day or two until this happened. This is how fast we can go from being in the presence of God to taking him lightly. The most important thing out of this when I read through this is Aaron's reaction to the death of his sons. It's not, it's time to grieve what's happened, he's not overwhelmed. It's we need to do this more. We need to not stop. These sacrifices need to happen now more than ever. Take them out, get rid of that. We have time for grieving later, but atonement is the first thing. And I said to myself, wow, if only I could have that heart. If only I could have that mind. When in the midst of tragedy, the first thing that I do is turn to Yahweh and say, atonement. Pray for atonement. Pray for peace. Pray for things to be made right with him when we've trespassed and sinned against him. I said, it seems like a tragedy, but in many ways, it's an outline for what we do during tragedy.
That kind of, this last question somewhat ties into what you were talking about. Okay, so they go through this horrible tragedy. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's a tragedy. Anybody who's a parent knows that's going to be tragic. And yet, they need to keep going. Why do they wear all the things? Why do they still do it? Because they need to. They need to. They have to. Yeah, they'll mourn later. Good point. In fact, the quick forgetting, that's why I got these on. Okay? Lord gives this humongous lecture to the people on how to follow the instructions, and then right away, some guy walks out and busts the Sabbath right out in front of everybody. He's put to death for it. It's like, where's this? Okay, wear these so you don't forget. Okay? These are neat. They're made in Israel. They got all sorts of cool stuff. The only requirement is it has a blue thread. Everything else is fine. I don't mind that at all. But they're zeets in the Hebrew. We'll call them tassel, because they look like a tassel, or the corner of your garment. The lady who touched Yeshua when she got healed of the bleeding, it's surmised because it was the hem of his garment, they were probably his zeets. And we had a hand up with Paul.
Yeah, you said what I was going to say.
Oh,
Except that if
sorry.
I remember correctly, in the vernacular, there's a scripture where they says that Yeshua comes with healing in his wings, and tzitziot are considered, they're called wings in a context of vernacular speech. So she was recognizing the healing power that he had based on the Psalms and that use of language that illustrated that to her. So that's why it was an act of belief for her to react that way. And she recognized who he was and what he could do. And obviously when she acted out in belief, the miracle happened. I wonder how many miracles we miss out on because we don't act out in belief.
Oh, I think quite a few. I think we miss out on a lot of miracles, a lot of aha moments, a lot of blessings that don't have to be miraculous, but they're still blessings, you know? I think we miss out on a lot. I really do. Especially as I've gotten older, but even when I was younger, I started like, I think I'm missing a lot here. Yeah.
So I see this Torah portion, from start to finish, it's about becoming holy. The priest had certain things that they needed to do, and precisely as Yahweh says, you don't add to or take away, or it's death. But it's about being holy before Yahweh. And it says in there, you're to be holy because I'm holy. And he gives us instructions on what holiness is. I mean, through this Nadab and Abihu, they die because they worshiped him in the imagination of their own hearts, not by his instruction.
Correct.
And that's what the heathen do with their gods. He's a separate God. There's no one like Jehovah. And he has specific way. You can't worship him any way you feel. Your heart feels like approaching him or worshiping him. Right from right from the start to the finish. Even the what's clean and unclean for food. It's a matter of holiness. We are a separate people. We have that eating, those eating instructions that the heathen, none of the other heathen have those instructions that we have. It's living in his household. Eating what he gives us, and not others, following his rules. This whole Torah portion is like it's the Garden of Eden. It's that tree of good and evil. Yeah, it tastes good. The pork tastes good. The shellfish tastes good. It said that when Adam saw that it was good to eat. It's pleasurable. And it's about holiness, being set apart as he is. That showing, and we do that to show the world that he is like no other God. Those other gods, there ain't nothing like him.
Yeah, a lot of stuff there. You go into someone else's home, you obey their rules, their custom. If you can't live with it, then, then don't go or leave. Yeah, this is Yahweh's house. Okay? So we want to make sure he's the one that sets the rules, we don't. It's really that simple. It really is. We want to be the boss. I mean, who doesn't? I'm human, so yeah, I want to be the boss. I want to be in charge. I want to set the rules. I want to do what I want to do. Okay? And to me, that's part of the sinful nature of rebellion and rebelling against Yahweh having that role in my life. Okay? Whether it's Abba Yahweh or Yeshua Yahweh, it's Yahweh. Okay? They're the ones in charge. Okay. Yeah, Paul.
I'm reminded of my dad in his later years enjoyed going to various congregations on Sunday night. Now, the area where I grew up, every village had a Presbyterian or a Baptist church, and they had a CMA or that type of church, and the bigger ones had a Catholic church. But he decided he was going to go to some of these little congregations, and he'd always go on Sunday night, but he said, when you go Sunday morning, you get what they want you to see. When you go on Sunday evening, you get to see who these people really are, because only the people that are serious show up on Sunday night.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And so he came home one night, and he was just really quiet. And that wasn't characteristic for him, especially when he came back from church. And he said, someone was there who was saying we need to pray for justice. And he said, what I was thinking is you can pray for justice if you want to, but I'm going to pray for mercy.
Yep. Yeah. And remember, it's a simple analogy, but it really works good. It doesn't mean don't do it. When you point the finger at something or someone, I don't believe you can do it. Just remember, 3 fingers are pointing back at you. So if you can withstand that type of examination, then you can say something. There's nothing wrong with that. Just remember, you're going to be kind of like judged by the same standard. I mean, isn't it interesting because Nadab and Abihu, they kind of picked their own poison. They offered a strange fire, so the Father consumed them with a fire. When they went into exile into Babylon for all the sins they did, what determined the length? Well, they owed God 70 years because they didn't do the sabbatical yearly rest on the land. They did a lot of, some people mistake that, and I'll be careful with that, but they think, they got exiled because they didn't do that. Well, no, there was a slew of stuff they didn't do. That was one of them, but there was a lot of stuff. That set the jail time. Okay? So, it is interesting. Paul, I see you have a microphone now. I missed that, sorry.
Now, so we have biblical role models here of things that happened in their life. And you have Moshe and his 2 younger sons. That immediate family took a phenomenal hit. I mean, a devastating hit. And yet they carried on. And for us today, either in the day we live or in the days ahead, we also may take a devastating hit. Unimaginable. Okay, whatever it is, it's unimaginable. Yet, I believe God wants us to carry on.
Yeah.
Just like Moshe did.
I agree, Paul. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You have to carry on. It doesn't mean you stuff your feelings and never go through them. It's just there's an appropriate time. I knew somebody who had a job that periodically they would be in a crisis situation. And they said they were always fine during the crisis situation because they had to carry on. But afterwards is when they fell apart. But then they processed it also in a really, really healthy way. Yeah, we have a hand up here in front.
Earlier, you were talking about being in Yehovah's house and abiding by his rules. And as we seek to dwell in his house in all our ways, and we set boundaries in our lives and try to keep his rules for our own houses, and then we are faced with showing mercy to others who are maybe not quite there yet and understanding or desire to do that for their Heavenly Father. And so we wrestle with, where do we take a stand and where do we be quiet and pray and let them grow? And it is so important that we are close to our Father and to seek his wisdom on these things. It's a struggle.
I have had to learn to be a diplomat. It does not come naturally to me. I can guarantee you that. I've had to learn. Try, and a key part of it is discernment and my own attitude, really. And also when I became a parent, it helped. Because then, no matter what happened, it's a teaching moment, that type of thing. And that really helped also as well, too. So, But you can learn, if I can learn it, anybody can learn it. That's for sure. A lot of times I observe stuff, and then I'll go, now I've learned now to say, okay, Lord, thank you for showing me. Now what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? I've learned that, how to do that now. Yeah, Paul?
I'm reminded in this, after what Miranda said, he tells us things to do, but he doesn't always fill us in on why. And when you have, especially once they're grown, you're reminded of, because I said so. Well, if that's okay for us to tell our 8-year-old, then why is it not okay for the one who created the universe by thinking it to have his own reasons? And he doesn't owe us an explanation for us to follow his instructions.
Very
now,
true.
I understand why we want that, but we don't have the right to demand that. We can either do it or not do it, and but we don't get to choose the consequences of not doing it.
Correct. We can choose our actions, but we're not always free to choose our consequences. But that's why I learned in parenting when they were very young, I said, look, you have a choice I give the power to the child. I try not to take it away from them and say, look, you've got a choice here. If you choose this, this is what will happen. If you choose this, this is what will happen. And then you decide what you want to do. And so, in a sense, they could choose their consequence, but they couldn't choose what it was no matter what they did, type of a thing. So, yeah.
Looking at our Father as as our example of the perfect Father, in Scripture it talks about correct your son the first time. I can't remember exactly where that is, but this would be an example of correcting the first time. But then there are so many examples of him showing mercy as well, and his long suffering and his patience. So I'm still trying to figure that out. I don't know. I would love parenting wisdom. So
He is very long-suffering. He's the perfect example of long-suffering. But I also could tell you he's a perfect example. It doesn't go on forever. There will be a point where he stops and says, I won't do it anymore. I didn't say his forgiveness had an ending. I'm not saying his love had an ending. I'm just saying this is what he does. The clear examples. So, and my big question is this, I'll use the current English vernacular a lot of people are familiar with, is this an Old Testament concept? They'll say, oh yeah, it is. The New Testament's all full of grace and love and happy times. I said, really? And then you show them all the times grace is all over the place in the Tanakh. Okay, it's all over the place. Then you can show them where, no, Yeshua told, I can think of 3 parables right now, a couple of dealings personally with people, and he was very much consistent with what he is here. And let alone when he shows up at the end on Revelation. Okay, he's very consistent. So he doesn't change. That to me is why it's consistent throughout Scripture. It's consistent. His love, his mercy, which I still cannot fathom, but I know it's there. And yet he will not tolerate certain things. He just won't do it. So we got 2 hands up over here, and we have a third one. Yes, go ahead.
So he just was jogging my mind that because it was a rabbi and he was teaching, I thought it was very, very intelligent wisdom I've used. Is don't ask why. Why is not a question, it's a protest. And when I started applying that, because we asked this, help me understand.
Mm-hmm.
I'm obeying, help me understand it. Because why is not? It's like, well, will I comply? I'm not going to evaluate God and his righteousness. It's the evaluation of myself that's at question. So we don't ask why, we ask, well, help me understand.
Yeah.
And I will cooperate, or I will cooperate
Right.
as I try to understand.
No, it's a good point, yeah. Aspen, yeah.
I'll bounce back to what Miranda was saying earlier. When you're looking at what seems to be the inconsistency with why Yahweh leads with grace so often, and then you have scenarios like this where all of a sudden there is just action.
Yes.
You'll find that most of these scenarios, when I look back, there's an underlying element of people drew close to Yahweh, and like this here in this particular case, that was his own holiness that required a response. And I think it's not that he's vengeful or anything, but we have this nature out of Yahweh where it's more and more dangerous. We're not perfect, and as we draw close to him, we need to maintain higher and higher degrees of holiness in order to be in his presence. And if we take that lightly, we shouldn't be surprised when his hand falls against us or he removes himself from our presence for our own safety. And honestly, I think the latter is far worse than the former.
Yeah.
I would much rather have him smite me than remove his presence from me and my family for generations to come. That way, he does not need to act.
Good point. Paul?
You were saying that it's consistent throughout. And of course, most believers will admit he's the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Correct.
But then they try to find ways to put limits on that.
Yeah, I got you.
And when we find ourselves thinking that way, I think what we need to do is re-examine it because we're misunderstanding something in the text. Frequently because we're not looking at the whole thing as we should in order to understand it. But he didn't set this up. He didn't give us the text to confuse us. He gave us this so we'd have a hope of understanding who he is. Now, I'm not sure that if I was him, I would have chosen to have us in this situation to get to know him. That was something he chose to do for his own reasons, but he did this. He didn't do it to make it hard for us so he could play whack-a-mole with us.
Yes,
He
I
gave
agree.
us this information so that we had a hope of knowing who he is because he wants us to know who he is.
I agree. Tim?
I have a question online from Patricia, and she asks, she said, what are some ways we can prevent offering strange fire?
Which is right there. That's a great question. Before we talk into that, can I answer a couple of other comment things? Because you're right about the why and stuff like that. But why did they perform these sacrifices? You find out. And then the last question, what was the result? And remember, the Lord keeps telling them, be ye holy because I'm holy. So that technically is it's not the individual little, why this little nuance and not that one, but it's the overall principle. But if you look at why did they perform these sacrifices, it's in verse 6. And then 7 tells you what they had to do before they could do them, really. And Moshe said, this is the thing which Yahweh commanded that you should do, that the glory of Yahweh may appear with you, unto you. The whole thing is to get the glory of Yahweh to appear to them. To do that, they must be atoned for. Hence, in verse 7, and Moshe said to Aaron, draw near unto the altar, and offer the sin offering and the burnt offering, and make atonement for thyself. They were the priests. They had to make atonement for themselves first. And for the people, okay? And present the offering of the people, and make atonement for them. Remember, the atonement is a pitch. It covers you over so that now the glory can appear and it won't kill you, and you can be with God. It's really that simple. It's not rocket science, okay? It's not rocket science. And I'm not saying you guys are making it rocket science, because you're not. You're really not, and I'm really blessed to have that. So, but that's it. And then I'll read the other verse, and then I want to get back there. In verse 23, and Moshe and Aharon went into the tent of meeting and came out and blessed the people. This is after all the sacrifices. And the glory of Yahweh appeared unto all the people. There it is. There's the glory. Okay, it only took them 17 verses. It wasn't that hard. It's not rocket science. Okay. And there came forth fire from before Yahweh and consumed upon the altar the burnt offering and the fat. When all the people saw it, they shouted and fell on their faces. It's really that simple. Okay? And I got one here, yeah.
So, yeah, sometimes we can't understand why. He couldn't explain it to us. Sometimes the whys are so in depth you can't explain it, just like a little child. Mm-hmm. Some people try to explain every single thing to their little kid, and their little kid can't grasp that, or their little kid's just going to disagree with you. When you were a kid, you thought your parents were wrong, and
yeah, I was shocked to how much my parents grew up after I got out of the house. They became really wise all of a sudden.
So, and I explained things to my kids when I figured they could understand it and take it on. But what happens is when they don't learn because Dad said so. Mm-hmm. And my kids know that to this day. You could go to my 40-year-old son and say, and I could tell him to do something, and I could say to him, do you know why I'm telling you not to do that? And he'll turn to me and say, because Big Dad said so. That was the right answer. They'd repeat that to me. I'd ask them why all the time. Do you know why you're supposed to do this or not do this? And that's their response. Because I wanted to teach them. And some people thought that was a cruel thing for me to go through with my kids. But I wanted to teach them to obey Yahweh just because he says so, because you do not understand the whys on all this. We've been studying this for how many years? And there's still whys we don't understand. And that's something we need to teach our kids. We've lost that in our society, where the kid demands an answer to why. And that's wrong. So the New Testament picture of this Nadab and Abihu is Ananias and Sapphira.
Perfect example here.
They were making a sacrifice. They made a sacrifice. They sold property and gave most of the money, and they ended up dying instantly.
And they lied about it.
Because they defiled it. It was no longer a holy sacrifice. It was an unholy sacrifice like Nadab and Abihu. And they instantly died. That's New Testament. No mercy, no nothing.
I know.
Boom. Because they made it unholy, just like Nadab and Abihu.
And Tim, in answer to Pat's question, that was on Patricia's question online, the first question I would ask is, define terms. So, what did they do wrong? What was it that Nadab and Abihu did wrong, so we can look at that and then see how we do it today, okay? Because it's a very good example one that's actually usually not faced much by a lot of people, or periodically they'll do it in their life. You really have to kind of go out of the way to do this, and it's usually unpleasant experience. So duh, people are going to avoid it. What did they do wrong? It's in chapter 10. Chapter 10. All you do is read one verse. In fact, you don't have to read very far in chapter 10. Come on, guys. Who's got the first verse in chapter 10? Tim's got it. College students are always ahead of the game, I tell you. What do you got, Tim?
I got verse 3 is one of them, where it says, "And Moshe said to Aharon," this is what the Lord said, spoken, saying, "By those who come near me, I must be regarded as holy or set apart, and before all the people I must be glorified."
Right, but what's verse 1 say?
Before Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his censer and put fire in it and put incense on it and offered profane fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded.
Yep, that's what they did. They profaned it. Okay, strange is a word that's used a lot of time. Profane is strange to the Lord. It can't exist around him. So it was a profane sacrifice. They thought, hey, we're good to go. They may have even, it doesn't say it, they may have even followed the right procedures. But the Lord didn't command them to do that. And so therefore, they got zapped. Okay? Does that make sense? So then, I see hands up, which is fine. Then, with Patricia's question, which is also on here, in what ways can we give strange fire before Yahweh? You may think we don't. Okay, with respect, if I follow you around for 20 minutes, I'll find something. We all can do it, and we all do it periodically. I try to get it out, purge it out. But it's easy to do, okay? Yeah. I think Aspen? No, over here? Go ahead.
I'm reminded of the little children. When I work with the little children, they say, "I do it." Me, I do it.
Okay.
And we have a tendency to self-will things.
Yes.
We don't go to prayer first and say, if God be willing, we say to ourselves, I'll go to the city and I'll do such and such, and it should be, if God willing, then I will go and I will complete to his glory in it, because I'm a piece of the greater picture. It's not about me. But we tend to puff ourselves up and think, well, I need to do this. I need to build this. I need to do this. And I need to make sure that he's with me. Because if he's with me, no one can be against me. So.
For him to be with you, what are you willing to sacrifice? Take to the cross and nail it on the cross. That actually is a great expression on that. I really do appreciate that. What are you willing to lay on the altar and burn it up? Yes, someone pointed out to me, yeah, but a lot of times we go up and pull the sacrifice back off the altar before it's burned up. And I went, oh, that's funny. Because that's what we do. Yeah, not only could it be the wrong one at the wrong time, but also you go, well, I'll give up half of that. And you pull the rest back. Yeah.
There was one fire, and one fire only, that was worthy of consuming those offerings. To introduce anything else was absolutely, totally incorrect. That's what we do in our own lives, right? We set up our own rules for how we would atone, how we will deal with sin, how we will address our repentance. We come up with all of these self-made solutions. But we don't go through Yahweh. I tell my kids, when you're reconciling with another person within the faith, you start with Yahweh first. That must be your area of agreement, right? That way you can be at agreement when you're trying to resolve something. Like I said, we put our offerings out there and we pull them back.
Yeah.
That is so true to what we do as people. This scenario, it's sad. And it's sad because this is all of our hearts. At the end of the day, we introduce that foreign fire in numerous ways. And we come up with our, we will twist the word of Yahweh to get what we want. We will ignore the word of Yahweh. We will bend it, reshape it, mold it, so that we can still feel comfortable that we're within his fold, but still have all the blessings of him. As you see here immediately, as you see in the story of Ananias and Sapphira, immediately, as you see in the scenario where they were carrying the Ark of the Covenant and they reached out and touched it. In all of these scenarios, our way wasn't good enough.
And how were they carrying the ark when they had to reach out?
Well,
I
there were
believe-
already many things that had went wrong.
I
with
believe it
that.
was on an ox cart, which they were not supposed to do.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
They just went right down the road and said, this is good enough. Thanks God for the coaching, but we got this. I don't know about you, but I have found that's when I need God to be merciful as much as I can. So that when he chastises me, it won't be death and it won't be permanently marked. And a lot of times he does. I have been disciplined a couple of times. I think of two really fast, both were physical. The first one startled me. The second one, before I hit the ground, I said, what did I do wrong? So I'd learned. And before I hit the ground, he told me. And then boom, I'm flat on my back going, I'm going to die out here. So I didn't. I was able to get back. But yeah, it's just, you got to be careful with this stuff. And remember where they're coming from. They're coming from Egypt. Okay, Egypt, huge religious system. They got all this stuff. They got, I forget how many gods, but they got a lot. They got a lot of procedures. They got a lot of things. And, they have to get the Egypt out of them, which they didn't when they did the golden calf. Okay, that's a big, huge one, but it's usually the smaller things. Even Jacob and his family, after they met with, I think it was after they met with Esau, he cleared, they were going to go, and he said, give me your idols, I'm going to bury them. They still had idols. Okay? So you got to get rid of them. Yes, sir.
I have more of a question than
Oh,
a
yeah.
comment, but it occurs to me in looking at this, and I hope not to offend anybody, but could it be that Easter is a modern form of strange fire?
I've been very, very careful not to mention certain things.
Well, that's the prime example. You're right. Christmas and Easter, that's what you get with strange fire. You talk to people about Christmas. It's unholy worship of Yahweh. He did not command it. And those people that are doing the Christmas stuff, they ain't keeping the other feasts. They're exchanging that, the holy fire for an unholy fire. So, but you talk to them, what? Are you against giving gifts?
Yeah.
See, they're going by their own heart, their own mind. Are you, you don't like the baby Jesus? You don't, you don't like the cheer of Christmas and everything? But we know that all that produces an evil. In the end, the suicide rate goes up. People are broke. They're running up their credit cards. Families fighting. Because it's not holy worship. It's unholy worship, and there's consequences to that unholy worship. So, yeah, Easter's a good example of.
Yep, we got
Same example.
We
of
got a
that.
hand up here. And I do want to comment on what you said, too, because it's a very good question.
Can I derail for a minute? Because
Say what?
our time is limited, so can I derail for just a moment? We always talk about where do we find Yeshua in all of this.
Correct.
So one of our questions in chapter 9 was, why did they burn things outside of the camp?
Yes.
So I just wanted to read Hebrews 13:11 through 13, because we have Yeshua. For the bodies of those beasts whose blood is brought into the sanctuary by the high priest for sin are burned without the camp. Wherefore Jesus also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered without the gate. Let us go forth, therefore, unto him without the camp, bearing his reproach.
Yep.
So I just want to point it back to Yeshua.
Very good. Another example that goes along with that is the red heifer. Okay, remember we went through the red heifer, and all of us are watching the cows that are in Israel right now that were born and raised in Texas because we want to see what they're going to do, okay? Because if they build the temple, that's an end-time event. That's what we're watching. But to back up now, you guys know that to get a proper working temple that can be defiled, which means it has to be holy. You can't defile something that's not holy. It's got to be holy. What makes it holy? The ashes of the red heifer. Therefore, you have to have a red heifer to burn and do the ashes. Just like Yeshua cleanses us, right? And the red heifers were sacrificed on the Mount of Olives, outside the camp. Same thing also. Yeah. And they've still got the cows. We have to wait for them to be 2 years and a day. Then they're eligible for sacrifice. And they already have, the last I saw was a broadcast Tim forwarded to me from about 2 weeks ago. I just watched it the other day. And they do have a place on the Mount of Olives where they can do the red heifer. That I didn't know. And they're moving them. They're going to put them probably in Shechem, as we would say, which is where Tim was working with Hayavah Ministries. Okay? They're going to move them. They're in a secret location now because they don't want anybody messing them up, but they're going to move them over there and stuff like that. So 2 years and a day. I think they're a year and 4 months old right now, I think it is.
It was Shiloh, not Shechem.
Oh, was it Shechem? It was Shiloh?
Shechem is Nablus, where the Arabs are.
You're right. My bad.
That would not work at all.
No,
So
you're
it'd be
right.
Shiloh.
Thank you. Shiloh. Thank you. Whew. I don't want to get that right. I don't want to get that wrong. I want to get it right. Thank you. Oh. Yes. What I found is there's kind of general three kind of camps I've seen people do. And one is, and I know this very well from personal experience of talking with people. One was a family member, and they said, when I was talking to them about some of the things that we're talking about here and stuff, they said, oh yeah, I always thought we were supposed to do that. I turned to them and I said, why didn't you do it? They knew. Other people have been in this movement, have gone to their pastors when they were going to like a traditional Sunday Greco-Roman church, talked to them about it, and they said, oh yeah, I know that. By the hundreds I've talked to people who've run into that. But if I teach that, I won't have a job. They knew it was accurate. Okay? So you have people who are ignorant, which simply means you don't know. It's okay. It's not a bad thing, to call somebody. It shouldn't be. But it just means you don't know. Then you have the people who do know and don't do anything. Then you have the people who do know, and I will call it mixing fire. You'll mix the holy and the profane thinking it's good enough. It's okay. Okay? Then you have those who will go all the way over and work at doing only the holy. Then you have some who would just simply switch religious systems. So they'll go from the Christianity religious system, whether they're Eastern Orthodox, Roman Catholic, or Protestant, they all got their stuff, okay? And then they'll switch all the way over, renounce Yeshua, and just take on all of the rabbinic Judaism. They'll renounce Yeshua and they take on rabbinic Judaism. Several people tried to encourage me to go that way, and I said, why do I want to exchange one man-made religious system, not a spiritual system, but a religious system, with another man-made religion? I just fought like tooth and nail to get out of that one and get it out of me. Why do I want to adopt another one? Yep. But you have that group in the middle that will mix them. That, to me, is the most prevalent. And all I can say is between you and the Lord. I've made my choices. In fact, I was just talking with Laura this morning. She wanted me to check on a source, so I did during the week and stuff. As soon as I read through their introductory letter, it was about 4 or 5 pages on the internet, I knew where they were coming from because they explained it. I went, and then I went deeper in, looked at all their stuff, it totally went the same way. They've kind of swung here, from what I can tell in the pendulum. To me, they're mixing. And you could be happy with that, it's between you and the Lord. But I told Laura, I said, I made that choice a long time ago. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it. I even heard a very good evangelical apostolic pastor out of India who's very, very mature. Today, he said, I feel like the Lord was watching his little thing this morning. I was drinking some coffee. He said, the Lord has a blessing for people. How much are you willing to sacrifice yourself to get it? He's not going to just give this to anybody. This is a very mature gift. We have to die to ourselves before he'll give us that. We really do. You don't have to believe in the Torah is relevant today to get that. It helps reinforce it with me, like stories like this. How much are you willing to die to get it? I know a lot of people want to raise the dead. You know where you have to be in holiness to raise someone from the dead? You really have to give up a lot to get there. The Lord will meet you. He'll meet you. But you have to die to self and get there. So to me, I want to get as close to him as I can. To the point where he'll even kill me. I don't care. I don't care anymore. Made that decision a long time ago. Kill me. I want to get that close to you. But he's been gracious enough to show me you've got blemishes, get rid of them. And then sure enough, I keep going deeper with him. I still can't find the end of him. There's always more to learn, more to do. So it's up to you. I'm not sure who was first, Tim or no, down here. Okay, go ahead.
So I'm just seeing that the other thing that we do a lot, just commonly, is that it's that spirit of compromise.
Yeah.
That the mixing is.
Yeah.
We're encouraged. Well, we need to tolerate, or they slap social words on it, which I don't disagree with. I'm not by any means going to force someone to choose what's right. But it's that when everything's going wrong, you don't stop doing what's right to address it. We have to keep doing what's right with everything going wrong around us. We don't make compromise with what's wrong because it demands attention. So I had this experience this week where I was like, okay, you're having a crisis, but I'm going to finish what I'm doing. So, I'll address your crisis when I'm done, but I'm going to finish, what I'm called to do first. And so we're encouraging every way. It's like every which way you turn. Do you compromise because you're going to a public school? Do you compromise because the person standing in front of you says, well, I'm not a Christian, and someone that had come up to me this week, and I didn't know what to answer, and I thought, I went home and I said, the next time somebody asks me that question, I'm going to ask them, well, why is that? Is it that you don't believe in him, that you don't believe he existed, or is it that you just don't want to follow his ways? Because it hadn't occurred to me that, I wasn't prepared. I didn't have oil there. I'm putting a stock in. so.
Thank you. Tim, thank you. I appreciate that. Tim? Sorry, I waited till you got all the way up on the other platform before I called your name out. Just see.
Just a couple of things. You mentioned it that a lot of the people who have done more research, even in the Christian world, Jewish world, know about the feasts. And some of the best information I've found on the ancient Near East or on the feasts and everything have actually been Christian sources. And there'll be a Baptist pastor and there'll be a PhD and they'll have all the information there. They'll be like, oh, this is how they would count the Omer.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can go in your dictionary, like a Holman Bible dictionary is what I have. And they have very, very good scholarly information on the feasts right there. And so I'd encourage everyone to go look at that. You don't take everything they say because they say it's been done away with, but a lot of them do a very, very, very good research. The same with the Jewish side too. So you can, they have it all right there. They have great things on the ancient Near East too, and so there's quite a bit there. And then with the feasts, another thing is if they're going to be in the future during the millennial reign in Ezekiel's temple, why would we not want to practice them now? Because if you look at the end of Isaiah, it says from one new moon to the next, from one Shabbat to the next, which is in the future. Why do we not want to start aligning and practicing and learning right now and then preparing our hearts for the King to return and then realizing that that's what we're going to be doing, is we're going to have our face towards Jerusalem. The restoration is going to come, and then that's where we're going to be looking constantly and going up later on in the future.
Yeah, I've heard very extensive discussions from Christians, Western Christians, I'll call them that way, because I don't have as much exposure to the Eastern Orthodox. Most of them are Protestant, and they've given me their best shots, and so I understand where they're coming from. I just, with respect, disagree. Okay, with respect, I disagree. Same thing with some of the Rabbinic Judaism people who are really upset if you try to keep written Torah. No, that's for the Jews. You do the Noahitic laws, or you do this and you do that. They get really upset. So with respect, and I do have a lot of respect for several of them, I disagree. And it's not, they don't understand my motivation and a lot of other people's motivations. And I disagree on how they're reading stuff in the scriptures and what it really means. But, it is what it is. So you gotta learn to deal with that. As we're doing stuff that we're doing, I realized a long time ago, we're not gonna have a lot of friends. Okay? We're not gonna have a lot of allies. Okay, because both sides will actually unite to come against. That's right. They really will. Okay, so it's like I don't get in their face. I don't do any of that type of stuff. I don't become a Torah terrorist. I love that phrase because it really describes what some people will do. But I will talk with them and debate with them if they want to talk to me about it. Sure, why not? Kevin.
So the question that was asked online. How can we prevent offering strange fire? You started this whole Torah portion with a bullseye, which is, he is holy. Mm-hmm. Now, you were to be holy. Mm-hmm. The context, of course, in that chapter is about these two men. Right before he makes that comment, he says, he consumes them in fire because of the strange fire that they had offered. So it would seem that the holiness of God is the starting point for us. And this is, I think, confirmed in 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 13, because he also is referring to this passage in Leviticus. Therefore, preparing your minds for action. So we prepare our minds for action and being sober-minded. Mm-hmm. So we need to be sober-minded. Set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Yeshua, Messiah. Mm-hmm. As obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance, but as...
I think we just have a dead mic. I think the battery just died. Oh, no. You got to turn it on. That one I think works.
Let me just read it. As obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance, but as he who called you is holy. We need to hear this. He has called you as holy. You also be holy in all your conduct. Since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. And
right.
We need to be focused on his holiness. Hmm? He consumed two men in fire that were making an offering to him. It was the wrong kind of offering. And here's the roadmap right here that answers the question to whoever was online.
Patricia.
So may we humbly receive his word this morning and go and ponder these things. Mm-hmm. This is the work I need. He needs to work in my heart.
Yeah.
It's better. This is terrifying.
Yeah. But it's the point of all of Leviticus. Remember, like the Torah, it's the first 5 books, right? And so a lot of way it's presented as you've got Genesis and Deuteronomy kind of on the same level. Then you go up, there's Exodus and Numbers, and they point to, and it's also a form of Hebrew poetry also, okay? You can take 5 verses. It's the middle verse that's the point. That's the point, because it's the highest point. But Leviticus, what is it in Leviticus? And be ye holy because I am holy. This is not an Old Testament concept. This is a Yahweh concept. It never changes. That's why Kepha Peter is quoting this. That's why Yeshua was constantly working with people. Okay, he was very repetitive in helping people be holy. It's key. It's key. This is why I took a whole trailer load of Christmas stuff to the dump. This is why I got rid of other stuff, and to make sure someone else couldn't use it, I beat it up or destroyed it, and then I took it to the dump because I had that much to take away. It's not like a little wastebasket. It took me years to get rid of all that stuff, and sometimes they're sneaky. They'll hide And all of a sudden it pops up, where'd you come from? You're out of here. I had no negotiation with me. One just popped up a couple weeks ago. And I replaced it with something that was neutral. But I got it out immediately. And I made it so it couldn't be used again. But that's where I'm at. Now, you can do that too much to the point where you become hard and brittle like Paul did when he was holding the coats and persecuting the Christians. I'm not saying go there. I'm not saying go. Don't be Paul going to Damascus trying to kill believers in Yeshua. Okay? Don't do that either. But when it comes to demonic stuff, to me, there's no negotiating. It's gone. As best I can tell and as best as I can do, I will do that. Because I realize it can be leaven. And once it gets in, it can leaven everything. The Israelites, how many times did they, we have mics working now? Oh, good. How many times did they do the pagan rituals? Then you would get, and not in the northern kingdom, in the southern kingdom, you get a good king in. All of a sudden, he cleared all the idols and stuff, but he did not get rid of the high places because they were doing idol stuff up there too, okay? Eventually, it's going to leaven the whole thing. It is. The southern kingdom was exiled twice. You know, once with the Romans and then once before the Babylonians. The northern kingdom has never come back officially yet. I think parts of them are there, but not officially. And why? Because they were polluting the land. Whose land is it? Whose house is it? Yahweh's, not ours. Okay? So yeah, how close do you want to get to the Lord? I'm watching our time. And how much do you want to have a relationship with him? He's willing to meet. I've never seen him deny somebody. He's always willing to meet you. Even if you're on death row and you're a mass murderer, he's willing to meet you. But you have to die to self. We got time for one more, and then I'm going to... Well, hang on. You don't have a microphone, Craig? We'll do this last one, and then we'll wrap up.
It was just as he was quoting the scripture over there, it caused me to realize when I approach people to remember I'm his gift, he's not mine.
Mm-hmm.
And to remember in all of my offering, it's not what I'm offering, but the fact that I'm a gift to be used as a vessel to offer, rather than what I'm doing. I'm his gift.
Yeah.
So, bless you.
And remember, when they did the golden calf, they said, this is Yahweh who brought you out of Egypt. Okay? You can't do that in my book. So can you take a pagan ritual that was originally pagan, or a pagan symbol that was originally pagan or demonic, all the pagan stuff is demonic, and call it good? That's a question you're going to have to answer. I answered it for myself, and that was, no, you can't. Is it neutral and the bad guys took it and corrupted it? Okay, now we can talk. Like the rainbow. It's a classic example. That's Yahweh's bow in the sky. They made it part of their movement today, but if you're only 15 years old and you grew up with it all the time like that, you think it's originally pagan, but it wasn't, okay? That's an example of that. And so then you come then to the question of how many masters can you serve? 1 or 2? Even if you call it holy, does God call it holy? Can you serve 2 masters? The answer is no. It's in a lot of places in the Tanakh. It's in Yeshua's own words. You can't do that. You've got to choose this day whom you will serve. Elijah did it when he wiped out all the Baal prophets. Joshua said it. Yeshua said it. If you have a problem with that, then your problem is not with me. It's with him. And watch it. I just hope he's merciful with you. You know? Okay, thank you very, very much. Sorry about the technical difficulties with the microphones. Jerry, the whiz there, got him fixed. We're going to take a little break. We'll be back in about 10 minutes for our second service.